Hey all, I was gonna make a video on like things related to your phone and how it's like ruining our minds and ruining our sleep and relationships. And it just struck me like, what if I reframed that question and I expressed rather than the negativity of what do phones do? Instead, talk about the opposite, which is what does not being on my phone do to me, do to my health, and do to my life. And so I'm going to be talking about exercising and how that has changed me. And there's a lot of layers to this. There's so many layers. So stick with me, even if you're not like, you know, super into your running or your gym or into your sport, because it's not just about exercising, but rather an outlet that is not related to instant gratification, aka it's related to hard things. And I think this is one of the most pressing issues in today's society where hard things are just very rare. So let me take you back. I'm going to take you way back to when I moved over from South Africa to the UK. So a huge change for myself and my family, as you can imagine. Like, it was a big step, a big change in my life. And when change happens, often there's two ways a person can go, because there's a lot of emotions built up, there's a lot of feelings that need to be dealt with. And there's two ways you can deal with them, really. There's a good way and there's a bad way, right? The bad way is to fall into addictive habits that are detrimental to your health. So we have things like, in a moderate scale, but everything to an extreme is bad, right? But like phones, technology, gaming, even food, comfort eating, and you have more hardcore things like alcohol and drugs and all these other stuff. That's the bad. I don't really want to talk too much on that because there's enough negativity on social media. And so I'm going to focus on the positive, which is how you can positively deal with this emotions that stir up inside you. And what stirred up for me like 6 7 years ago when I moved over to the UK, huge change, like I said, big change in my life. And there was lots of ways that I didn't deal with it as best as I could. Definitely could have been more intentional in many areas, especially with my phone usage. But I'm very grateful that I had running. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And I was running before I moved to the UK. My family's always been a very relatively fit family. My dad was a runner, so I had the full experience when I was young. Like, I don't know if you ever had this, but like, I'd get pushed in a pram, and I would be sat in the pram, and I don't know, it just got my love for running. And when I came to the UK, and when I've experienced these consistently hard seasons in my life, I find myself falling back into these positively good habits, right? These exercising good habits. Why? Because it's an outlet. It's an outlet for what we call in psychology pent up emotions, aka emotions that are built up on top of each other, many different stimuluses from the external environment as well as internal. So you can have thoughts in your own mind that can be very self conflicting inducing, right? And how do you deal with it? In aggression psychology, we say that the action of really like pushing your body, like actually physically pushing it, is a really great way to deal with pent up emotions. And some people do boxing, right? That's a great way, like the act of punching. Some psychologists say that's getting it out. We call that deferment, like deferment of emotions. don't hit a person, hit a boxing bag type stuff, right? For me it was running just gave me such a sense of calm. Like even now, if I've had a long week at work or a long day, even just going on a long run, it's just so there's something about it. There's something about it. And even the gym as well, that was a huge factor in my life a couple of years ago. Still is, significantly, still like consistent, but I was a lot more obsessed before. Like I feel like, I don't know about you, but it's hard to be obsessed with two things at once, because the whole idea of obsession is that you focus on one thing. And so right now I'm fully focused on running. Gym is there. Like I'll go gym, but yeah, have that one thing that just takes a step back from everything that's happening in your life is so important. In fact, I was talking to my brother and he told me that there's this one guy, I don't know who he is, but he's like a finance bro and he works like 12 plus hour days. There's another guy who's in corporate law and he does like exceedingly long days, and he would always go on a run every day after work because it was what kept him sane. And it's true. The act of, putting down your phone, like saying, I'm not going to be on, I'm going to put it down. Getting out in nature, I think, is another thing within it. It's so beautiful. You don't have to run, you can go on a walk, but the act of getting out and just being in God's creation and taking a step back from everything is just, it's important. It's not even good, it's vital. Like we humans, we have that, we need that. And you see people, and I feel like I've been that person when I don't go to the gym and I don't run. I get this stress of life and you don't let go. You bring it into the next day and you bring it into your relationships, you bring it into your work, and your productivity decreases. And it's just like, it's not healthy. It's not healthy. Now, a lot of these these emotions that are caused, I feel like is largely related to social media and technology in itself. And so the act of getting out, I really think is important. Just go out into nature. Just go out. But it's hard. It's really difficult, to actually take the step to build a habit. That's the hardest thing, right? Once a habit is built, it's easy to continue. But it takes, they say, 30 days of consistency to get a habit. And so for 30 days, you have to be fully intentional. You have to be fully focused. And you've got to be locked in. Otherwise, it's always going to be hard, right? The first 30 days are going to be tough. But then you build this habit and it becomes a part of your routine. So getting that outlet is vital. And you see people who don't have that outlet, and I don't know, man, like you can kind of just tell. You can just kind of tell there's a lot of undealt things. Now, I do want to talk about quickly the other side of the spectrum. And there's a tendency for people like myself and others that I know who get really focused on a single thing, then that thing itself can become a potentially detriment rather than a positive. So let's take running, right? It's like an obsession driven person might fall into potentially suboptimal habits. So take running, right? I've seen a lot of progress in my running in the last year. I was on Strava and it popped up like on those like 1 year ago, and I was like, no way. So I clicked on it and it was like my parkrun PB or something. which was like 21, low 21s for 5K. I don't know if you know what a park run is. It's a great event. Recommend, not a plug. And it was like low 21s. I was like, whoa, like my park run PB now for 5K is like 19s, mid 19s. So it's been a huge progression, right? There's been a lot of growth. There's been incredible dopamine successes, right? Because when we feel a success, we get a dopamine hit. However, there's a risk. There's a risk that there's obsession, and that the act of running can become too extreme. That I start chasing new and foster times, that I make that my life, that I make that my source of happiness, that I make that what I live for. And you see people who do this, and they go to the Olympics and they excel, from the sport perspective incredibly well. And yet, when they can't do the thing that they love, the thing that they're obsessed with, so for example, if they get injured, right, which is a common thing in sport, it's very easy to get injured. They fall into like depression, and they feel like their purpose is gone, and it's worse than before they started, right? So there's this risk, and it's not just in running; it's in all things in life, in your work, in your studying, even in relationships. Maybe some of you don't want to hear this, but if you're too obsessed with that person, you're not going to find love in them. You're not going to find joy in them. In fact, they're probably going to cause a lot of pain. And that's if the obsession becomes unhealthy. And it's easy in all those areas for what potentially was a good habit to become something that is really dangerous. And you're putting your source of your emotions on that thing. So that's the other side of this spectrum, right? It's this unique balance of managing the things in your life that are positive, that benefit you by taking you out of ordinary life, right? Out of things that is just mundane, eating and going to work and having, friends and and maybe watching a movie or series, stuff that is outside of that, exercising or writing or journaling or I don't know, whatever it is, music, right? All those things, if they are managed, is beautiful, it's incredible. Like your life will flourish when you put your time towards that. However, it's this unique balance that if you spend too much time on that, you lose the joy in that, and it's no longer an escape from everyday life. Instead, it becomes an obsession that it can be even more harmful. And a lot of the times, if we obsess over things to an extreme, then we lose the joy in it. So it's finding that balance, but there's a love for it, For me, at the minute, I'm loving running, and hopefully it doesn't become an obsession. But I just wanted to talk about that. Find your outlet. For me, when I moved to the UK and through all the highs and lows of the last 6-7 years, like running and gym, they have been my outlets. Even during exams, during busy periods, during stress, it's vital that you have that, because the pent-up emotions are even more, right? And as much as I know this will hurt, and I have to tell myself too, but this is not an outlet. This is not an outlet. People say, oh, I'm tired, I'm going to scroll. Man, do I feel you? And I relate heavily. It is so hard. It's because we've been programmed by our dopamine receptors that are constantly triggered by these phones, that make us just want to use that as an emotion regulator. But instead, it regulates nothing, but it numbs everything. So we think we're better, But what happens? Those emotions get suppressed. And if you know anything about psychology, or if you are a human, you know that suppressed emotions are not good, and they will seep out, and it will slowly affect your life without you realizing it. So yeah, that was my thought. That was my thought process. So think about what your outlet is. Think about what your healthy outlets are, your unhealthy outlets are, and go for it. Maybe it's running. Maybe it's running like me. And if it is, welcome to the club. Yeah, that's all. Thanks for listening. Until next time.